So hello and welcome. We're now going to start looking at a section called products, right? And what we want to do over here is we want to find out how do we multiply products. Now you've already learned about what a monomial is. It is an expression that contains only one term. And then you've also seen what a binomial is. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at multiplying what we call monomials, right? Or expressions that contain only one term, and we want to multiply that with a polynomial, right? Something that contains two or more terms, a polynomial. Okay, so I'm going to show you what the general rule is, and by general I mean something that holds this position, right? So if I'm going to say a, right, or let's just do it without brackets because it's perfectly valid, a multiplied by b plus c. If I give you something like this, then you want to actually multiply it out and you want to do something and say that's going to be the a multiplied by the b plus the a multiplied by the c. And that's going to give you a times b. Remember, this notation means a multiplied by b. Multiplied the signs, a positive times a positive gives me a positive. And a multiplied by c is just a multiplied by c. Okay, so that's the general rule. And remember, the a is just a placeholder. It's just taking up the space for something that belongs over there. So that's expressed in general. I could have made a triangle multiplied by multiplied by open bracket square plus heart. Okay, and that's going to be following the exact same rule. I'm going to say triangle multiplied by square, triangle multiplied by square, and then we multiply out the signs and we get the following. We say it's triangle multiplied by heart, and then I get the following. I get plus triangle multiplied by heart, and there we go. So we're going to multiply the monomials, which is this thing over here, by these things over here, which are polynomials. So I'm going to go through a few examples, and remember, you must learn actively. You cannot learn mathematics by simply watching me. You need to write at the same time, or you need to pause the video, take down the notes, make sense of them. If you need to go back, ensure that you rewind as well. So let's look at a few different examples, right? My first example will be 8 multiplied by 2x minus 3. And let's see, how do we do this? Well, we have to multiply the 8 into the first term, and then we need to multiply the 8 into the second term. And how do we do this? Let's see. We do this as follows. Let's do the first part. 8 multiplied by 2, that's 8 multiplied by 2, let me just use the red, and then I will write that answer in red. 8 multiplied by 2 is 16, and there's no x there, but you're multiplying by 2x, so it's 8 sets of 2x, and that's going to give me 16x. And then I want to say that exact same thing, a positive number multiplied by a negative number, positive times negative, is going to be negative, and 8 multiplied by 3 is 24. I want you to pause there, and I want you to take this down, right? If this is very new to you, just look at what I've done. I've simply said 8 multiplied by 2, that's 16, and that's 8 sets of 2x's, which must mean I've got 16 x's. And then 8 times 3 is 24, but a positive times a negative gives me a negative number. Okay, let's look at another example. Oops. Okay, so that's negative x, this is my second example, multiplied by 3 minus x. Okay, and so what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to say negative x multiplied by 3, right? Negative x multiplied by 3. So I do this in the following order. I start with a negative and I multiply the signs here. Now remember, if you don't see a sign, then you know that that number is going to be positive. So negative times positive is equal to a negative, and then x multiplied by 3 is just 3x, right? Because if I say 3 times apple, that's going to give me 3 apples. Okay, so therefore 3 multiplied by x is 3x, and a negative times a positive gives me a negative. And then I have to multiply the next part. The next part is that same negative x multiplied by negative x. And what do I do over here? And remember, when you take down your notes, please don't just observe me doing this. You cannot do this as a spectator. You cannot do this just watching me. You need to write it down. And when you write it down, what you do is you engrave a neural pattern and you help transfer it to your long-term memory. So a negative multiplied by a negative gives me a positive, and x multiplied by x gives me x squared. That's according to the exponent laws you would have done in the previous section. Okay, so that's an easy one, negative 3x plus x squared. And I cannot add further. I cannot simplify this further. That's simply because, according to the fundamental principle of addition, this is counting x's and this is counting x squareds. So I don't mix them. I leave them as minus 3x plus x squared. Okay, pause the video there, breathe, drink some water, and then let's do another example. Okay, let's take this one. It's x multiplied by y multiplied by 2x minus 5y. And let's see what we can do. I have to take this entire term and I multiply it by this thing over here. And remember, when you multiply these things out, they become quite simple. And then the second one, I got to take that entire term and I multiply it by this thing over here. This is called distribution. When you spread things out like this and when you multiply it out, it's called distribution. And I say the following. I say xy multiplied by 2x. So it's really xy dot 2x, right? I'm just doing it the long way now for you to see that we can still multiply it out. And then we say, okay, the next part I'm going to do is I say a positive multiplied by a negative gives me a negative. And I'm going to say that's going to be the xy multiplied by 5y. Okay, now remember, when we look at these numbers, when there's just a term like this, there's usually an invisible 1 in front of it, right? Okay, and now we want to multiply the signs and then the numbers with each other. So I'm going to do that over here. I'm going to say that's 1 multiplied by 2. 1 multiplied by 2 just gives me 2. The x multiplied by the x gives me x squared. And then y multiplied by nothing here, it's just the 2, which is already there. That's going to just give me a y. Okay, and remember, where do I get x squared from? I get it from my exponent laws, because x to the power of 1 multiplied by x to the power of 1, when the bases are the same, they become x to the power of 1 plus 1, which is equal to x to the power of 2. Now let me go further. This here is a negative multiplied by a positive. It's 1 times 5, so it's going to be negative 1 times 5 is just 5. X, you just see an x, and then you say y multiplied by y is y squared. And now you see that this thing over here is counting x squared y's, and this thing over here is counting x y squareds. I cannot simplify further because x squared y is not the same as x y squared. However, x squared y is the same as yx squared, xy is the same as yx, but x squared y is not the same as x y squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a not equal to sign there. And how do I get a not equal to sign? I just draw a simple line through it like that. That means not equal to. Okay, let's do a few more examples. Let's see, and at this point I want you to actually pause the video and then you can do it, and then I want you to come back and I want you to work it out. So let's pause, give it a try. No, you didn't try it yet. Really, pause the video and do it on your own and then come back to me. Okay, so if you've tried it, all you're going to do is you're going to take this first term and you're going to multiply it with this thing over here. And then you're going to take the second term and you multiply it with that thing over there. So I'm going to do the blue part in blue, and I'm going to say that's just negative 2 multiplied by m squared, and that's going to be negative 2m squared. For the second part, we simply say negative multiplied by a positive. Negative times a positive is negative. And then we say 2 multiplied by 2 is 4. And there's nothing else, so it's just 4n. And again, here you're counting m squareds, and here you're counting n's, so you cannot simplify further. Let's give you another one to try. Right, so this one's going to look a little bit tricky. It's minus 3a squared multiplied by 3a squared minus 2a plus 1. Right, and I'm going to just draw this at the bottom because that looks a little bit tricky to draw it on top. So I'm going to say you're going to take that one multiplied by that one. Don't think your mind is blown right now because you're just multiplying. And when I draw the arrows at the bottom, it's exactly the same. That entire term multiplied by this term over here. And then finally, let's try the green one. That entire term multiplied by that term over there. Okay, so let's work this out. Let's start off with blue. A negative multiplied by a positive number, a negative multiplied by a positive number has to be negative. And then I say 3 multiplied by 3 is going to be 9, and a squared multiplied by a squared, according to exponent laws, a to the power of 2 multiplied by a to the power of 2 is equal to a to the power of 2 plus 2, which is equal to a to the power of 4. Because the bases are the same, so that's going to be 9a to the power of 4. That's the blue part. Take that entire term, negative times positive, negative. 3 times 3, 9. A squared times a squared, a to the 4. Let's look at this one over here. The red one now. I say negative multiplied by a negative. That must be a positive. And then I say 3 multiplied by 2. That is going to be 6. And then I say a squared multiplied by a. So I've got a to the power of 2 multiplied by a to the power of 1. Remember, if you just see a, then it's a to the power of 1. And that's going to give me a to the power of 2 plus 1, which is equal to a to the power of 3. And that's going to be a to the power of 3. Then the last one's actually quite simple, because here we are multiplying. Let's first multiply the signs. Negative times positive is negative, and that one was in green, so let me just stick to the green. Negative times positive is a negative, and 3 multiplied by 1 is just 3, and we're left with a squared. So this one's quite easy, the last part, because anything multiplied by 1 remains itself, and therefore when I have negative 3a squared and I multiply that by 1, it's still negative 3a squared. Let me ask you a question. What is 100 multiplied by 1? Very good. It's just 100. What is 10 multiplied by 1? Just 10. Very good. What is 58 multiplied by 1? 58. Very good. What is negative 32 multiplied by 1? Negative 32. Okay, so what is 1 multiplied by negative 32? Just negative 32. Very good once again. So let me ask you a question. What is chicken? Ooh, that's wrong. Multiplied by 1. And the correct answer is chicken. Because anything multiplied by 1 remains itself. Okay, so are you ready for the last one? And this is one that you must try. Negative a half x multiplied by 6x squared minus 8xy plus 12y squared. Again, very easy. Let's see. We're going to take that entire term multiplied by that. Then we're going to take that entire term multiplied by that. And then we're going to take that entire term and we multiply it by that. So let's see how does this pan out. Negative times positive, negative a half multiplied by 6. Multiplying by a half is equivalent to dividing by 2. So when I say 6 multiplied by a half, I'm saying essentially 6 divided by 2. So 6 times a half is going to be 3, and x multiplied by x squared is x to the power of 2, and there's a 1, So that's going to be 3. Let's multiply it by the next one. Let's take our time. A negative multiplied by a positive is positive. Oh my word. What I meant to say was a negative multiplied by a negative is a positive. And 8 multiplied by a half is the same as saying 8 divided by 2. And 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4. And x multiplied by x is x squared. And you're just left with y. Then let's do the last one. A negative multiplied by a positive. What does that give you? A negative. A half multiplied by 12. Very good. That's equal to 6. That's just x over there. And I'm left with y squared. So there's a key set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 examples for you to work through. Make sure you have all those examples down and then do the rest of the activity that is required of you to complete.